Hello, I'm Hank Brigman, and today we're going to address 3 questions, the answers of which will help us understand why we need to go from Post-its to a mouse in the primary tool of customer experience management and how that will help accelerate our customer experience efforts. These 3 questions, the first one, what does the history of customer experience management teach us that can help us succeed today? The second question, what are the 5 activities that all of our organizations are involved in that need to better integrate? And what's the emerging technology involved in 2 of those activities that's the big thing in customer experience today? And lastly, the third question, what is the future organizational change that we can anticipate and that will help the success of customer experience in the future? Those are the 3 questions, and that will help us understand why we should go from Post-it notes to a computer mouse. The first question is the history of customer experience management. What can it teach us, and how can those lessons be applied today? First, we need to understand that any organization can only produce 2 assets, a physical asset and a perceptual asset. The physical asset is only true for companies that manufacture a product. And here, if you have a manufacturing process, you have multiple steps that work together to create the product. And they're identical every time they go through the steps of the manufacturing process. There are also steps to the customer journey that create a perceptual asset. Those steps generically are we market, we sell, we fulfill, we account, and we service. As our customers or prospects go through those steps, it's through those steps that they create a perception of our company, of our business. They develop trust, perhaps. But how we're organized and how we work creates challenges. Each of those steps are different departments. In each of those departments, there are different experiences. In each of those experiences, there are multiple touch points. And so aspects of the journey to the customer can be disjointed. So the lessons of the history of customer experience management have to do with developing that perceptual asset. And then something big happened. Quantification of some of the customer experience metrics. Yeah, we had Net Promoter Score, we had CSAT, we had first call resolution. We started to see lifetime customer value, but we started to see the ability to tie those to key organizational KPIs, to revenue, to renewals, to referrals. It was about this time that I actually invented an original formula for correlating Net Promoter Score to top-line revenue. And as we started to quantify that, we started to get more executive acceptance. And that was huge for customer experience. So where are we today? Now we certainly have executive acceptance. In fact, we have our own customer experience executives. We have chief experience officers. We have VPs of customer experience. We have our own processes and methodologies and tools. We have budgets. We've come a long way. But I think there are 2 historic lessons that we can take from the history of customer experience that we need to keep close as we go forward. Those 2 lessons: customer experience is here to break down silos, to look holistically at that customer journey, to traverse sales and marketing and fulfillment and accounting and service, or whatever the aspects are to your customer journey. So bridging those silos, breaking down those barriers, key to the success of customer experience. The second key, quantification. Our ability to move from satisfaction to dollars, from Net Promoter Score to renewals, etc. So let's see how we can apply those 2 lessons going forward. And we'll start with our second question, which is, what are the 5 activities we're all involved in? Every one of our organizations are doing these 5 activities. And how can they be better integrated? How can we break the barriers between them? And then what's that emerging technology that's the key and hot customer experience tool right now? So within each of these 5 activities, there are needs and there are challenges. The first activity, profile. Now here, the need is to collect as much first-party information from our customers as possible. We want to get to know them. We need to get to know them. This helps us on so many levels. The second activity, preferences. To best engage our customers, we need to meet them where they are, where they want to be met, through their channel of choice. Preferences, so important today. The third activity, analyzation. We need to analyze data. We need to understand the profile. We need to understand the preferences. We need to understand all the touches along the journey. We need to understand where the friction exists. And we need to be able to identify opportunities and measure results of our efforts. The fourth activity, mapping. This is just one of the primary tools, a brilliant tool of customer experience. In 2002, I co-invented touchpoint mapping, and that, along with a bunch of the other mapping methodologies of the time, have evolved to what we use today as journey or experience mapping. It's just a brilliant tool that helps us see, understand, and plan. And lastly, the activity is execute. All four of those previous activities lead to emails, lead to text, lead to website. This is where we execute our plans to help that customer along their journey. And the goal of these 5 activities really is to help generate conversions. And I'm not talking about the macro conversion to sales. I'm talking about the little bitty conversions that get customers to move along to the next step. It's the little conversions that keep the journey going, that make the path happy. And it's those little conversions that are so key and so important to customer experience and to our customers, to building trust, to building that perceptual asset. And those little conversions help continue the customer's journey to their ultimate happy path. And their happy path is what they're trying to accomplish. Do they want to make a payment? Do they need a service call? That's what they're trying to do. That's their happy path. Our job in customer experience is to help make that the happiest path it can be. So those 5 activities, those are the need states, but they each have their own problems. With preferences, we tend to have a little preference greed, don't we? Early on, we want to get as much information as we can. If we have something we want somebody to download, we've got fields and fields of information we want to collect. And yet, data shows the more fields we ask, the less submissions we get. In fact, asking for a phone number reduces submissions by at least 5%. Honoring preferences. Wow, this is just a growing aspect of business today. There are over 100 global privacy regulations as we speak. Gartner anticipates that over 65% of the planet will be under privacy regulations within the next 5 years. So there are challenges that we and organizations need to meet through obtaining preferences and related consents. And then analyze. A challenge with analyzation is that we have trouble getting a holistic omni-channel view. If you think of page views or clicks or likes or sales or payments or first call resolution, each of those are in different channels, and the data often reside in different databases. So bringing that together into a holistic view that really helps us understand our customer's omni-channel journey can be challenging. That then leads to mapping. The challenge in mapping is how we have historically done mapping is employees in a room trying to map the customer journey. And in my experience and all of our experiences, I think we've come to know that employees really don't know customers as well as we think we do or should. And so it's not uncommon that we kind of get a narrow view and that perhaps our view of the customer journey isn't even accurate. And execute. So the challenge with execution really resides in the challenges of the previous 4, because they all lead to execution. If we don't have the right profile, it's tough to execute personally. If we don't have the right preference, tough to meet the right channel. If we don't have the right analytics, again, it's tough to have the right plan. And if we have employees mapping, it may be tough to get accurate information, accurate plans. So those are the challenges of those 5. So let's look at a use case, a generic use case. This hopefully is applicable to your business, but it's relatively generic. Let's look at Joy. She's the VP of sales for a financial services industry. She wants to know, and she asks analytics, who are our most profitable customers? What's the nature of our most profitable customers? A month later, analytics comes back and says, our greatest lifetime customer value are those customers with more than one of our financial products. Makes sense. So Joey goes to Sharon. Sharon's the VP of Customer Experience, and Sharon says, let's map out our cross and upsell efforts. So 6 weeks later, after 4 mapping sessions, they have a plan. They're going to conduct an A/B test, use both text and email, and see which of the messages creates the greatest click-throughs. So this plan engaged Profile to help targeting, analytics to help with the data, and will also capture the results of the A/B test. Obviously, mapping was involved, and CX to help facilitate that, and then we're going to execute on the email and the text. So the test ran for 3 weeks, and a week after that, analytics came back with the results, and lo and behold, one of the A/B tests was superior, and so of course, the organization was going to implement that going forward. End-to-end, through question to the end of the successful test, probably about 14 weeks. Sounds about right. Now, this is a success for both Sharon and Joy, and they're going to be able to quantify and report on that success going forward. But was it the success that it could have been? Let's think about that. And we're going to look at an emerging technology that combines 2 of these 5 activities and what it may have done to this use case. You see, it's going to actually show that the test they ran wasn't the test they should have run. The journey they were looking at wasn't the journey that produced the most multiple products for a customer. Also, we'll see how we can shrink from 14 weeks, the end-to-end, to about 3 weeks. The emerging technology combines the analytics activity and the mapping activity. And remember the challenges in those 2 activities. One, in analytics, it's tough to get the omni-channel view, and in mapping, we've got an insular internal view that may not be accurate. Now, this emerging technology is called by a variety of things these days. You have a journey analytics, you have journey management, you have journey orchestration. Now, Forrester and their Wave reports looking at these platforms, they call them journey orchestration platforms. In the Forrester Wave report, I affectionately call them JOPs, short for journey orchestration platforms. So what do these JOPs do? Well, first and foremost, they capture these omni-channel touches. Whether it's on your website, whether it's your call center, whether it's on social media, whether it's click-throughs, whatever the case is, it's capturing all those and doing so in near real time. Now, what does it do with that captured data is here we bring it in and we analyze it and we map it. The analytics now are available on the omni-channel touches of our customers, real touches. And lastly, it orchestrates. It uses artificial intelligence, machine learning to help us understand what some of the triggers that we can do to improve those little bitty conversions we talked about, those little conversions that keep the customer on their happy path, that makes it the happiest, the smoothest path, helps create trust, helps build that perceptual asset. So if Joy and Sharon had a journey orchestration platform, if they had a job, how might that use case have been different? Well, jobs use sand key diagrams. Now, sand key diagrams show quantity of flow through touches. So Sharon and Joy would have been able to see the quantity of members as they went through various touch points. They would have seen where the majority of members purchase an additional product. And the analytics in the job would have shown that the actual path that produced the most additional products was the customer receiving a notice that their statement is ready. Clicking on that link, going onto the website, and looking at their statement. And in that statement view, having a panel with a call to action that says, check out an additional product. They go to that product page, look at the products, call the call center, and it's through the call center that they actually engage and agree to that additional product. So 3 channels is that happy path. Although the sand key diagrams would have shown it's not the happiest path it can be. It will show the friction along the way, that at steps, the quantities of customers that move on reduce and reduce and reduce, so that you could see the friction. So a new plan, rather than an A/B test in email and text, might be, well, let's use our profile information to create panels that are targeted to the demographics of the individual that's on the page. So if they're on their account summary page. They have a panel that's targeted to the need state, typically of that demographic. Now let's also then perhaps work on the products page. Why are so many people leaving the products page and calling? Now it could be the products are sophisticated and they want to talk to somebody, but are there simple products that we can make easier to accept on the product page? And then lastly, if we're going to A/B test, let's A/B test in the call center. Let's keep part of the people coming as they are, but one of the call center metrics probably is call time. These are sophisticated discussions, asking questions about products. These are probably some of the longest calls. And we know that service advocates and CSRs can get a little squidgy when their calls are running long and they know they're being measured on call time. So maybe the A/B test is current flow and a small team that's trained on how to deal with these products, not measured on call time so much, and that part of the panels direct people to that small group with a different phone number. That would be an interesting A/B test to run. So with the JOP, you have the right journey, you have a view to the omni-channel touches, you see the friction, and you can now develop a plan that's actually going to focus on the right journey, and you're able to reduce time. So we've combined kind of the analytics and mapping activities of those 5. Let's look at the other 3 quickly. What are the opportunities there? With profile, again, we talked a little bit about profile greed. The thing that is happening in profile now is what's called progressive profiling. So rather than trying to catch as much as you can up front, that greed, it's really collecting bits of information along the journey. You add. It's a progressive way of collecting data and information. A little bit here, a little bit there. You add, you add, you add. You know what you've collected before. You don't ask again. On preference, and we really need to add consents and privacy here. There's huge risk. There are typically in most countries, there are fines. There can be lawsuits. You really need to start to look at perhaps some of the technological tools that are available on preferences. It's so complicated. And regulations are changing every day. And so these tools stay abreast of those. They're country and regulation specific. Consider taking a look at those, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then execution. Jobs don't deliver communications. They trigger communications with the communication tools that companies use. So whatever you're currently using for execution, if you have marketing automation, etc., those will probably work well with the journey orchestration platforms. So the jobs trigger the right communication at the right time to the right person with the right message to help them on their journey, to help with that little conversion they may need right then and there. Now, as an organization, as we look at these 5 activities, a couple of keys here and a couple of warnings. The key is to look at them holistically. And really, some of these new technologies, the jobs and maybe the preferences, can replace some legacy tools and legacy expenses. The 2 warnings, there are a lot of tools out there that claim to be jobs, that claim to do all of what these journey orchestration platforms can do. Just beware. A lot of the marketing automation tools claim a little bit more than they're capable of. So just understand that you've got some wolves in sheep's clothing out there. Do your due diligence. It's a jungle out there with the journey orchestration platforms, but look on an enterprise level and make sure that it encompasses all the capabilities that the true journey orchestration platforms do. And lastly, be sure that the tools you look at, they work together, or the tools you're looking at bringing in will work the other 3 aspects or 4 aspects of these 5 activities. IT integrations will be important, of course. Now, integrating these 5 does 2 really key things, integrating these 2 technologies into these 5 activities. One, it improves compliance, it reduces risk, but it accelerates. It builds on this historic lesson of really helping you and your organization break down some of the barriers between these various activities, to smooth it out, to make it quicker, and to quantify. Progressive profiling increases that first-person data, and it helps each of the subsequent activities. And then, of course, preferences and consents. Knowing the channels that your member want, you can meet them there. Also, as you collect preferences and consents, it helps engagement with your customer. You can often communicate with more customers. And also, if you're collecting email or text opt-ins, chances are you can reduce the cost of your communications if some of your communications go by mail otherwise. And then the journey orchestration. This is the true accelerant. It improves accuracy. It reduces your go-to-market time. Remember, 14 weeks it took Sharon and Joy in the original use case and 3 weeks with a job. Now let's just think about that for a second. If each kind of customer experience question through to the conclusion of execution of the test runs 14 weeks, over the course of a year, if you did them sequentially, you can do about four of those. If it takes 3 weeks, you can do about 17. Therein lies an aspect of the accelerant. The ability to squeeze down the time of the analytics and the mapping and some of the other aspects of those 5 activities. The job does an extraordinary job of expediting and accelerating the time to market with your ideas, your plans, and your tests. Jobs can actually run an A/B test, and you can set a threshold that you say if either of the options gets to a consistent 70% versus 30%, the test stops and the 70% goes ahead at 100%. So those are the 5 activities. But what can be our first step? What should we do, right? Well, consider an audit. Let's look at those 5 activities. How are they currently integrated? What's the current technology we're using? How are they working? What's the current state? We've talked a little bit about the future state today, but let's look at current state, future state. What's the gap? And what's the plan to close the gap? So those are our first 2 questions. We covered the history of customer experience and what we can learn from that. We covered the 5 activities. Lastly, it's what's the future organizational change that we can anticipate and use to benefit customer experience. Well, here there are 2 departments that actually have a very similar journey with the people they deal with, HR and customer experience. For both, we have prospects. We market to them, we sell to them, we close them, we onboard them, and we account, and we service. Very similar flows. And each of these departments have different tools that are compatible to the needs of the other. So HR has a similar journey as customers. Why not use the mapping expertise, the mapping tools of customer experience to map employee experiences? HR, they have training expertise. They are typically drive organizational culture, and customer centricity is a cultural play. So marrying mapping into HR, marrying and bringing the training and cultural change expertise from HR into customer experience, it makes a lot of sense. These are tools that can be utilized for each of the 2 disciplines, each of the 2 departments. And so to me, the future organizational change is to fuse HR and customer experience, to go from a customer experience and an employee experience to people experiences. Interesting thought. I don't see that in the short term, but perhaps over the next 5 to 10 years, the evolution of those 2 departments, I think, will fuse. So today, we've covered 3 questions. We talked about the history of customer experience management and the lessons we can bring forward to today, about bridging silos and quantifying, and the key asset of building that perceptual asset, building trust and creating happy paths. We talked about those 5 activities: profile, preference, analyze, mapping, and execution, and how there's a technology today that we should look at perhaps on the profile side, and to combine analytics and mapping and the power of journey orchestration. We can apply these lessons from the history of customer experience management to break the barriers down between these 5 activities. And we can use journey orchestration to accelerate our customer experience management efforts. 14 weeks to 3 weeks. 3 a year to 17 a year. And lastly, we talked about fusing HR and customer experience to move from customer experience and employee experiences to people experiences. So let me leave you with a couple of thoughts today. Lots of lessons over the last 20 years of customer experience management. We certainly know that we now need to better integrate these 5 critical activities. We need to look at technology for preferences and for jobs. We need to think about auditing the current state of these 5 activities, the technology, how well they're integrated, and how big the gap is between where we are in our current state and that future state. Now, I've talked a lot about technology today. I want you to know I'm not associated with any of the technology companies. I have a customer experience consultancy, but I've done my research. I've done RFIs and RFPs. I've had lots of demos. I've met the teams of these companies. I've been in meetings. I understand their capabilities. I stay on top of it. And this is what I'm trying to share today, is what I've learned, because as I mentioned about jobs, it's a jungle out there. So I'm here to hopefully help you understand these 5 activities, understand how to break down the barriers, understand where technology, new technology, emerging technology may fit in, and understand that jobs are the big thing in customer experience right now. We see the need. We see the need for how we can improve compliance and accelerate our efforts. This would help us understand then how we go from Post-its to a mouse in the greatest tool of customer experience, which is mapping. So take those Post-it notes, throw them away, get a job, and work with your mouse. I'm Hank Brigman, and I thank you for the honor of your engagement and your attention. I encourage you to reach out to me. Perhaps it's on your do list. I hope so. I love this stuff and would embrace any questions you have. Please don't hesitate. I'm Hank Brigman with Customer Experience Strategies, Inc. Thank you.